Elizabeth Martin, a 70-year-old woman, led a quiet life in her modest and cozy home. From the very morning, she followed a measured, almost silent routine, tending to the plants in her garden, dusting the furniture, and spending long moments gazing at the framed photographs adorning her living room. Among them, a special place was reserved for a picture of her daughter, Marissa, taken many years ago when they were still close. Every time she looked at it, Elizabeth sighed heavily, recalling her failed attempts to rebuild their relationship after the divorce. Unfortunately, all her efforts had been in vain. Elizabeth's loneliness was felt not only in her home, but also in the small daily habits she used to fill the void in her life. Knitting by the window, watching the neighbors from afar. Though she appreciated the quiet of her neighborhood, deep down, she longed to hear joyful voices and laughter in her house again. One afternoon, while running errands in the city center, Elizabeth overheard a conversation near a van with the logo of the K-9 unit. Two police officers were discussing something. One said, "This dog can't serve anymore. It's a shame, but he's too old for duty." Overcoming her usual reserve, Elizabeth approached them and asked, "Excuse me, what will happen to the dog?" The younger officer, his voice kind, explained that the dog, a Doberman named Titan, had been a loyal member of the team for many years but was now retiring due to his age. He added that Titan could be adopted if someone was willing to give him a loving home. Elizabeth paused, feeling an unexpected connection with Titan. Here was another soul deemed too old and unnecessary, yet still capable of so much. Sensing this bond, she declared, "I'll take him." The officers explained the care such a dog required and shared details about his training. Despite some doubts, Elizabeth decided to take Titan home that same day. When Titan stepped out of the van, his appearance was impressive. He was a sturdy, muscular dog with glossy black fur and brown markings. His eyes carried the weariness of a veteran who knew his best days were behind him. On the drive home, Elizabeth tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Well, Titan, it looks like we're partners now. Starting a new chapter in life." "Huh." Titan glanced at her briefly before settling on the back seat. Elizabeth also felt an inexplicable calm, as if something in her life had fallen into place. At home, she showed Titan his new surroundings. He thoroughly inspected the territory, demonstrating his skills, responding to basic commands and remaining calm. Despite his composure, Elizabeth was still slightly intimidated by his size. She wondered if she could handle the needs of a dog like Titan and whether she was ready to care for him properly. Yet, amid these doubts, a spark of hope ignited within her. Perhaps this new companion could fill the void of her loneliness. The next morning brought a new rhythm to her life. She woke early to the sound of Titan's paws sliding across the living room floor. His majestic posture and disciplined movements clearly showed that Titan was no ordinary dog. Clutching a cup of coffee, she watched as he meticulously explored every corner of her home. His curiosity was boundless. Titan examined the antique furniture, the embroidered curtains, and showed particular interest in the back door leading to the garden. With a timid smile, Elizabeth whispered, "This is your home now, too." Hearing her voice, Titan turned and walked toward her. Despite his imposing appearance, his eyes radiated kindness, giving Elizabeth newfound confidence. With each passing day, they grew more accustomed to each other. Accustomed to a solitary and orderly life, Elizabeth was pleasantly surprised by Titan's small, touching gestures. One day, as she sat in her favorite armchair knitting, she noticed Titan approaching her with her slippers dangling from his mouth. "Titan!" Elizabeth exclaimed, trying to sound stern, but her laughter betrayed her amusement. There were also unexpected moments of closeness. On his first night, Elizabeth prepared an improvised bed for Titan in the corner of the living room, but he persistently followed her into the bedroom. When he tried to jump onto her bed, she gently held him back, patting his head. "No, Titan, not here. This is my bed." The Doberman looked at her and then settled by her bedside, as if understanding that she needed his company as much as he needed hers. Their bond deepened, and Elizabeth began to recall memories from the past. One day, while walking in the garden, She stopped by a rose bush she had planted many years ago, back when her daughter Marissa used to run around the garden, her laughter filling the air. Sitting on a bench, Elizabeth gently stroked Titan's head and said, "Titan, you know how much Marissa loved this garden. She always said it was our little paradise." Her voice carried a hint of sadness. The divorce had been an especially difficult period in Elizabeth's life. She had tried to shield Marissa from the emotional strain, but the rift it caused in their relationship ran deep. Marissa blamed her mother for the separation, and the years of estrangement left painful scars on both of them. With Titan in the house, Elizabeth felt a long-lost sense of security. The Doberman not only accompanied her on walks around the neighborhood, but was always on alert. One evening, as Elizabeth prepared dinner, Titan let out a low growl. His gaze was fixed on the window. Elizabeth went to look but saw nothing suspicious. "It's okay, Titan. There's no one there," she murmured, though her voice betrayed a slight unease. Such situations became more frequent. Titan guarded the house as if he were still on duty, meticulously checking every door and window before settling down. Elizabeth didn't fully understand the reasons for his behavior, but she learned to trust his instincts. One sunny morning, Elizabeth decided to take Titan to Central Park, a place she hadn't visited in years. The park was alive with activity. Children laughed and played, joggers ran by, and elderly couples chatted peacefully on benches. Beside Elizabeth, Titan walked with calm, confident strides. His imposing presence drew glances. Everything was peaceful until Titan began to pause. His attention was drawn to some bushes by the path. He tensed, ears perked, showing extreme alertness. "What's wrong, Titan?" Elizabeth asked, trying to calm him by gently tugging the leash. Titan let out a low, determined bark. His gaze remained fixed on the bushes. Feeling a slight unease, Elizabeth saw nothing suspicious but found it hard to continue the walk as Titan refused to look away. At that moment, a shadow darted from the bushes, quick and almost imperceptible, but enough to catch Elizabeth's attention. Puzzled and slightly alarmed, she decided to cut the walk short and return home, unaware that this was only the beginning of bigger events. Upon returning home, Elizabeth noticed that Titan's strange behavior had intensified. He began patrolling the garden even more meticulously, never losing focus. The atmosphere in the house shifted. Titan's constant vigilance seemed to warn of a hidden danger that Elizabeth couldn't see. During the day, he would slowly circle the house, often lingering by the windows to look outside. At night, his quiet growls occasionally broke the silence. At first, Elizabeth chalked it up to Titan adjusting to his new home, but her unease grew. "What do you see, Titan?" she asked one evening as he stood by the window, ears twitching slightly, as if the slightest sound could confirm his suspicions. Resigned, Elizabeth went to bed. However, sleep eluded her that night. Meanwhile, in an abandoned house on the outskirts of town, two men were finalizing their plan. "The house is perfect," remarked Charles Rivers, an experienced burglar, peering through a broken window as he spoke to his partner, Jacob Taylor. He held up a photo of Elizabeth's house, taken in the park. "I've been watching her for days. Her routine is predictable." "Are you sure? That dog looked pretty big," Jacob said, his voice tinged with doubt. "He's old. Won't be a problem," Charles smirked, checking his tools. Their plan was simple. Break in through the back door at night, take anything valuable, and disappear before anyone noticed. To them, Elizabeth was just a defenseless old woman unlikely to put up a fight. Back at the house, Titan was unusually restless. While Elizabeth busied herself in the kitchen, he remained by the back door, growling softly from time to time. Elizabeth called to him, "Titan, come here. It's okay. There's nothing out there." But her voice betrayed her own anxiety. Eventually, she decided to check the garden with a flashlight but found nothing amiss. Still, Titan continued to growl, his unease keeping her awake. Charles and Jacob confirmed their plan. They would strike the next night. Charles was confident, but Jacob, despite his outward calm, couldn't shake his worry about Titan. "It's just an old dog, don't worry," Charles assured him. Though he seemed to be reassuring himself more than his partner, the night fell silent. Exhausted from the long day, Elizabeth went to bed early. Titan, as always, continued his patrol with his usual vigilance. His body was tense, his ears alert, his movements cautious, as if he sensed something was wrong. Outside, Charles pointed to the back door with a confident grin. "Piece of cake. No one will hear us. And if the dog shows up, he won't stop us." Jacob, visibly nervous, adjusted his gloves and nodded silently. They began working on the lock. Inside, Titan, who had been near the kitchen, suddenly turned toward the back door. A deep, warning growl rumbled from his throat, signaling the presence of intruders. A click, the lock gave way, and the men slipped inside, cloaked in darkness. Charles turned on a flashlight, illuminating the living room, while Jacob began rummaging through the room for valuables. "See? Told you it'd be easy," Charles muttered, opening a drawer filled with old photographs and documents. Suddenly, a faint sound echoed, heavy, deliberate footsteps in the hallway. Jacob aimed the flashlight toward the noise, and in its beam appeared two gleaming eyes, followed by a large, imposing figure. Titan emerged from the shadows. His powerful presence filled the room. A deep, menacing growl shattered the silence. "Is that the dog?" Jacob whispered, stepping back. Charles, trying to stay calm, scoffed. "It's just an old dog. Relax, he won't do anything." Titan didn't hesitate. Despite his size and age, he lunged at Charles, knocking him to the ground. Charles dropped what he was holding and struggled to defend himself. But Titan, expertly trained for such situations, clamped down on his arm, immobilizing him. Then, releasing Charles, Titan turned his attention to Jacob, who had bolted for the back door. Titan caught him in a few strides, pinning him to the ground. His loud barks echoed through the house, waking Elizabeth. Startled by the noise, Elizabeth jumped out of bed, her heart racing. Clutching her phone, she cautiously approached the hallway and froze at the scene before her. Titan had Jacob pinned to the floor, while Charles, clutching his injured arm, tried to get up. "Titan!" Elizabeth shouted, her voice a mix of fear and concern for the dog. Despite her panic, she managed to call the police, her voice trembling as she explained the situation. Titan stayed in place, firmly holding the intruders. "It's okay, buddy. The police are on their way," Elizabeth reassured him, keeping her distance but trying to stay calm. In desperation, Charles grabbed an object nearby and swung it at Titan. But Titan dodged effortlessly, slamming Charles against the wall. Meanwhile, Jacob could barely move under Titan's iron grip. The room was filled with the intruder's shouts, Titan's relentless barking, and Elizabeth's frantic commands as she tried to maintain control while waiting for the police. The sound of sirens cut through the tense silence. Titan, though injured, remained alert, guarding Elizabeth until help arrived. When the police entered the house, they were met with an astonishing sight. A retired K-9 unit dog had single-handedly subdued two intruders. Charles and Jacob were quickly arrested, and the officers praised Titan for his heroism. "He's still got it," one officer remarked, gently patting Titan's head. Elizabeth, still shaking, knelt beside Titan and looked into his eyes. "Thank you, Titan. You're my hero," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks as she stroked his smooth fur. Soon, Elizabeth noticed a small, bleeding wound on Titan's side. "Please call a vet. This dog saved my life. I can't let anything happen to him," she pleaded. Despite his exhaustion, Titan wagged his tail faintly at her voice, showing that his spirit was still strong. As the police secured the scene and gathered evidence, the atmosphere remained tense. Charles and Jacob were led out of the house in handcuffs, while Elizabeth, still in shock, kept her eyes fixed on Titan. Despite his injury, he stayed close to her, his breathing heavy but his posture alert. "Incredible," one officer said, crouching to pet the Doberman. "This dog is a real hero." Another officer recognized Titan immediately. "That's Titan. He used to work in the K-9 unit." Even retired, he's still got it. Hearing this, Elizabeth felt a mix of pride and concern. She watched as Titan panted, the wound on his side still bleeding. "Please, we need a vet right away. This dog saved my life." "I can't." She stopped, struggling to hold back her emotions. While they waited for the vet, the officers continued their work, photographing the scene and collecting evidence. But it was Titan's incredible act of bravery that caught the attention of the media. One officer, recording the scene on his phone, remarked, "This story needs to be told. A dog like this deserves recognition." Soon, Titan's heroism went viral. Headlines read, "Titan the hero. Dog saves owner and stops 2 intruders." Photos of the brave Doberman, standing tall despite his injuries, spread across the internet, becoming a symbol of resilience and courage. As they waited for the vet, Elizabeth stayed by Titan's side, gently stroking him. "You're more than just a dog, Titan. You're my friend, my protector. I don't know what I'd do without you," she said softly. Despite his exhaustion, Titan looked up at her, his tail giving a faint wag, as if he understood every word. When the vet arrived, he quickly examined Titan, noting his strength. "The wound isn't deep, but he'll need stitches. He'll need some rest. For his age, he's incredibly strong." Elizabeth breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that Titan would be okay. She thanked the vet as Titan was carefully loaded into the veterinary van. Before they left, Elizabeth ran her hand over his fur one last time and whispered, "I promise to take care of you just as you've taken care of me." Meanwhile, a few miles away, Marissa, Elizabeth's daughter, was having dinner and watching the evening news. Her attention snapped to the screen when she heard her mother's name. The reporter was recounting the incident at Elizabeth's house, showing footage of Titan receiving medical attention. A 70-year-old woman was saved by her dog, a retired K-9 unit member, during a break-in attempt, the anchor reported. Marissa's fork clattered onto her plate. The words triggered a flood of memories, times when her mother had protected her and cared for her well-being. A wave of guilt washed over her. For years, she had kept her distance from Elizabeth, holding onto old resentments. But seeing her mother in this new light, she felt an urgent need to reconnect. In a burst of emotion, she grabbed her phone and dialed Elizabeth's number. "Marissa." Elizabeth's voice was filled with surprise when she saw her daughter's name on the caller ID. "Mom, I saw the news. Are you okay?" Marissa's voice trembled, betraying her emotional state. Both women felt the walls between them beginning to crumble. "I'm fine. Titan is an amazing dog," Elizabeth replied, trying to stay calm, though her voice wavered. Fighting back tears, Marissa said, "Mom, I need to see you. We need to talk." A few hours later, Marissa arrived at Elizabeth's house. Seeing her mother tenderly caring for Titan, who was comfortably settled on a makeshift bed in the living room, brought tears to Marissa's eyes. She walked over and hugged her mother tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry for staying away for so long. I thought I had my reasons, but I was wrong," she confessed. Elizabeth, deeply moved, replied, "I've made mistakes too, darling, but I'm just glad you're here now." Titan watched this heartfelt reunion, his tail thumping softly against the floor, as if he understood he had helped bring the family back together. During their conversation, Marissa suggested an unexpected idea. "Mom, Titan is amazing, but he shouldn't be alone. What if we got another dog to keep him company?" Elizabeth's smile widened, reflecting how much Titan had already changed her life. "That's a wonderful idea, dear. If Titan has taught me anything, it's that everyone deserves a second chance." A few days later, they prepared for a visit to the local animal shelter. As they walked through the doors, Elizabeth felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. The sound of barking echoed through the halls. Titan was with them, seemingly aware that he was about to meet a new friend. The shelter manager guided them through the rows of kennels, introducing them to dogs in need of homes. A German shepherd named Max, rescued from the streets, immediately caught Titan's attention. Max, younger than Titan, had a calm confidence that complemented his energetic nature. "I think we've found the one," Elizabeth said, watching as Titan and Max exchanged curious glances before playfully wrestling together. With Max's arrival, the house felt even more alive. Titan became a mentor to the younger dog, showing him the ropes. Elizabeth and Marissa delighted in watching the two dogs bond, their playful energy bringing joy and laughter into the home. One sunny afternoon, as Elizabeth sipped tea, she and Marissa sat together, watching Titan and Max play in the yard. "Mom, did you ever think we'd end up like this?" Marissa asked, gesturing to the dogs. "Honestly, no," Elizabeth replied, her smile reflecting deep peace and gratitude. "But now that we're here, I wouldn't trade it for anything."